All right, part 3. Come on. Mm. All right. First issue is in the reducer. Should equal to action. This is all reasonable. And then components should equal to action.data. Unreachable code detected. Why? How? Semicolon? Semicolon? Property assignment expected. Why? This is just destructuring. Unless TypeScript doesn't allow destructuring, but it really should. And I saw it up here. Oh, I see. They don't have it inside an object because it's not inside an object. We're just assigning it. Okay, data, right? Let's actually use data. Save, run, app loads, type a number. Before we change it, it's a map with a type, data. The data, you can see share price 2, share quantity 0, subtotal. It should be a number. Share price, I think, first of all, let's rewind a bit. All 3 of these should be numbers. That's strange. Parse float. We'll see if there's a bug from this later. For now, just components. Let's make you an object. Why is that a problem? Type object is not assignable to this, which is a map that takes a string and returns a component object. I don't want to have to deal with these complicated merges just yet. Like, just make it an object, and we'll figure out the types in a moment. The complaint is happening. Is it an, oh, whoa. Purchase calculator. We go to the top, component, no. Oh, is it in the store state then? Where we define this? Yeah. Components can be anything. Boom. 1. Components is an object. Great. First, what we're going to have to do is initialize the component when the component mounts. So component will mount. Here we go. This will actually be a separate action. This is the update field in an existing component, but we don't have an existing component. So do we want to do this in the purchase calculator or the app.tsx? When this component mounts, it could create instances of purchase calculator and sell calculator, which means they would assume that they work. I like that. I think the parent should control that. And now we'll have a reason to connect the app component. So as we know, we've got, let's import connect. What if I just write it out? Connect, 1 set of brackets, 2 set of brackets. You don't actually have any map state to props yet. So this can be an, oops. So the first input can be an empty, the second input can be null because it's optional. I think that's how it works. And then cannot find name connect because we need to import it from React Redux. This maybe is supposed to be null. App as any, as we've learned. Boom. Great. Now, component will mount. Once the component is about to mount, wait a minute. Oh, no, we're good. I was going to say that since the component names have unique names, like since these components have unique names, then maybe these components should be responsible for initializing themselves, but also when they unmount, uninitializing themselves. But technically, they don't know what their name is. We assign their names. So since this parent container, knows what their name is, then I'd say the parent container should know when to remove them. So suppose we have here an empty object, and add component is going to be the action we want to make. Update field. Where do we export all of this? We've got update fields, and this is under actions. So I'm going to copy all of these things, and then add component, and then component action, because we might actually have remove component after. Data any. Data should really just be an object with an ID string. And then we've got the actual action creator name, which is just add component. The constant, we're going to call it add component. And the data, again, is just a ID with a string. But you are a type of string. Type of string. Does that work? Nope. Oh, you're actually working, right? This isn't supposed to be typed. This is actually supposed to be reading it from, we get an ID, and we return an ID. Right. Add component. That should be an E. So now we're going to go into constants, create two new ones, add component, keep going with the A. There we go. So then we come back here, add component, takes an ID. Well, you should be a string. To type add component, you're returning an add component interface, which should have a add underscore component action. Boom. Yes. So we've officially created the action types, the action creators, this one right here. Let's go back to the reducer. We're going to have to import a lot of this stuff. Okay, and this is the field reducer. Oof. Cannot find name add component. Where can you not find this name add component? Where do we use add component? We don't use it that often. And it's lowercase, so it's this one. Ah, yes, when we import it. Now we have it as an action. Boom, dispatching it to the props. And now we should be able to do, technically we could have done these in bulk, but dispatch, add component. But now we'd have to do it like this, where we do one and then the other. Oh, why do we have dispatch? Why do we have add component in uppercase? Okay, And what's the issue now? Components not exist on type read-only children. Right, because we have not assigned props. Interface props and add component. Any. Whoa, nope, any. And there we go. And then we do one more of these calls to add component for the cell sharers component. And what we're trying to do is get the store to register both of these components before they're even rendered. That way, once they mount and once they're rendered, we'll have all access. We will actually know and like be able to be guaranteed that components at props ID is guaranteed to exist. That's the kind of pattern we're going for. So we don't actually need this component for mount. All right, let's see what happens. We run the app, and we have two calls. Remember, we're calling. We have a console log in the reducer every time we dispatch an action. And components is blank both times. What about the data? Well, we actually have ID sell shares, ID purchase shares. So what's wrong with the reducer? Why is it not able to create components? Huh. Let's debug. Let's debug once we actually like, wait a minute. We don't even track it. Add component, return, whoops. Here we go. So if we were to add, what's the issue? Type add component is not comparable to type update field. Why is it not comparable? Do you both come from the same constants? It's not comparable. Why is it uncomparable? Type compatibility. I'm guessing because one of them has data and the other one doesn't. Add component is imported but never used. Is there supposed to be a break? No, you're unreachable. So yeah, you can see here that how they define their on-increment and on-decrement functions. Like this doesn't give you anything. It's a function. You could have just written the word function that returns void. This doesn't give you too much information. So that's unfortunate. I think that If the library could somehow enforce type safety all the way through the props with the action creators, yeah, that should be a thing. Oh, it's an update field action, no matter what. We need a component action. What? Why is this the index reducer though? So now we'd need combined reducers and some other stuff to make this actually all work. Because yeah, right now the field reducer is applying things to the root level of the store state. But realistically, only, let's say, an export function component reducer, which takes state in its actual store state, and then takes an action, which is a component action, and then it should return a store state. And then return state. Now you work. Technically, field reducer should be a child of the component reducer because it only updates field inside component. Well, I just go through with it. Let's grab everything, put it here. This is add component. What happens when we hear the add component action? We want to assign components to be equal to components how do we want to do this? We want to break apart, first of all, what we already have in components and merge that take whatever we already have in state.components and we want to assign an ID to be equal to a new object with an ID. I know it sounds dumb, but data.id, data.id, data is of type any, expected a colon. Oh, this needs to be square brackets. There we go. And then this does not need braces. And hopefully that does it. A little complicated on the reducer front. We'll want to simplify that. There we go. Two components being called, data, ID, cell shares, and nothing is being saved. So where is this field even used? Create store field. What if we did components? Has no exported member component. Oh, singular. Yeah. We definitely want to improve this. This is a little ugly, and I'm obviously messing this up a lot. Field is declared, but whatever. Boom. Oh, add component. Ooh. it looks like it's working. It looks like we are adding the components to the store. So we go back to the reducer. And by the time we get here, by the time we try and update the fields, we do have two components with these IDs, and their value, they're currently just a string because I'm merging in this. But what I actually meant to do is it should assign const new component should equal to an object where the ID should be data.id. And that's about it. And boom. That's what we're actually doing. At this ID, we have a new component. This is the new component. Its type is a component type. We should be able to import that from types. There we go. It's our component type. Just to make it clear. Let's try this again. Update, and by the time we're updating, we now have two components, purchase shares, sell shares. Then each has an ID, and the ID is also the key that we accessed it by. Okay. How do we get this reducer to work nice with the other reducer? Create store, component. Combine reducers. Most likely we're going to root reducer should equal to combine reducers. And then potato. The potato is not necessarily managed by the potato reducer. Tomato. Great. Reducers. And then reducers should be it's from Redux. Great. Combine reducers from Redux. Combine reducers. Okay, const combine reducers should equal to, how do we use it? That's so. Let's not do that here. Let's actually do that in the reducers file. Import combine reducers from Redux. And then export const root reducer should equal to combine reducers. And what does it do? It takes a list. It takes an object rather. Oh my. Where just takes component. For now, technically, that's all we actually have. And then the component reducer will need to call the field reducer somehow. But why is this an issue? String? Okay, you are now a string. We're exporting the root reducer. Now instead of combining the reducers here, we just want to import reducers, import root reducer from here. And then we pass the root reducer here. Don't need this anymore. Argument of type reducer is not assignable to parameter of type reducer based on store state. And then the state of the field, oh man. Ooh. Of the reducer. This seems a fair bit easier. How are we creating the store? Create store, returns a store state, and you get the root reducer. Do we really have to initialize it? Or can we just do that? Seems like we can initialize it. Oh, no, we can't. It's saying that a components is missing in type empty list. So there you go. There are the components. Did I define something here? Everything here is returning store state. What is the issue here? The reducer is the same as the field. Or rather, this component reducer is the same as the field. So is there an issue with the way we combine reducers? Argument of type reducer. Maybe this is a common one. These are, I don't know. Okay. Use this TypeScript. Strict contributions of common parameters. If I change the reducer to a type reducer of some state, where state is the state and action is the action, and it returns the state it compiles. So I just need to type this to be a root state, store state. That's not what you're supposed to be, but you're supposed to be a function of store state. This should return store state? No, it shouldn't. Why do I have to give the reducer a type? This is just getting painful. I don't want to type my reducers. I'm not going to have that many reducers. There's not going to be any conflicts with them. My mind is being blown right now with how painful it is to type that. There's the reducer map object. Wow, this is unnecessary. There's an official reducer type that we can import from Redux. Great, happy to know that. And then we're supposed to, these guys define it. Okay, it's of type reducer that takes as input store state, and technically an action of any type. But no, we're not doing that. Okay. Little unnecessary details. Nice. Hopefully in the long run, this helps me out. Component is declared but never used. You're used right there. What are you talking about? Okay, yeah. Here, you're declared and never used. Reducer component returned undefined during initialization. The initial state may be undefined. If you don't want to set that for that, you can set null instead of undefined. Okay. That's fine. That is expected. So we've got the state. Continue logging the state. Whoa. And if not state, then state should equal to an empty object. State of type store state. Store state. Come on, store state. What are you doing here? Components. Any. Oh. Oh, what am I doing there? It shouldn't be an empty object. It should. Yeah, components should just be an empty map. What's the issue? Why? Object is not assignable to type store state property. Components is missing in type empty object. Oh. Oh. This is the parent reducer. Then, depending on the type of action, it probably should propagate that action to the subsequent child reducer. So like, state doesn't exist, then component should equal to an empty thing. Cannot read property purchase shares of undefined. Why is this undefined? Okay, console, sources. Show me console drawer. There we go. Components, undefined. Props, great. Okay, instead of destructuring, what if we actually wanted to just do like state? And here's state dot components dot blah. State, component, and then components. Okay, this is me messing up. Components. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Index of source. This is plural. Where do we have component? I bet it's because we named the reducer component. Let's go to that reducer. Right, so this creates a component domain at the top. Well, if that's the case, we should rename it to components, and then its state should be empty, and that's because you're not actually getting the store state. No, well, no, you're not. You're not getting the store state. Where's the store state defined? You're getting the component state. Components state. Export interface. And it's just going to be a list of components. It's not going to have anything else. How do I do that with TypeScript? Like, it's not going to have properties. It's just going to have keys, like a string and then a component. Okay, these types have been slowing us down a lot. So if we could move along here, but like state is not store state. Let's call it any for now, because it is different. It's just a component state, and what it's supposed to do is return. It does not have a field called components. Instead, it should take its original state, which it already does, great, and merge it with the following. Data at ID should equal to new component, and that's a component type. Okay. What's the issue here? Did you mean components? Yes. Yes, I did mean components. All right, let's see what we got for state this time. State, components, right? We have two components, purchase shares and sell shares. And if we were to run this command now, we'd get the component. Oh, progress. This is intense. Okay, purchase. So we now have the correct component. Do we even need the ID? Well, we already got the ID, so I guess it doesn't really matter. Now we want to run update field on these fields. We should give it an ID, and the fields that you'd like to update, it should not be in there. No, it shouldn't. And then let's go to where we define this. Yes. Okay, you take an ID, which is a string, and fields, and you create a data object out of it. Don't even really need to indent. There, of ID and fields. And then in the reducer, how do I say that this reducer should run the field selector? Components, field, state. And you definitely don't get component, you definitely don't get that root state. You get the any state. Update field action. We definitely know that's going to happen. This is a component action. Maybe you might want to also call it a update component. Field. The field reducer. Well, first of all, it should be fields reducer, since components is plural, and fields should be plural as well. What's the complaint? Property components is incompatible with index signature type fields. How do I nest reducers? Oh, we have to run combine reducers here as well. That's somewhat helpful. So whenever the fields reducer is caught, it always applies to the components reducer. Okay, that makes sense. Reducer fields return undefined. Okay, same as here. If it doesn't exist, we initialize it. What is our state now? Components, components, fields. So that's the reducer doing that, and that's not what we wanted it to do. Maybe it should just be part of the components reducer then, and we just know what to do with it. But then we have to group, based on TypeScript, we have to group, like if we were to add update field to this case statement here, so we know it would always return just another components list, the action would be component action or update field action. Can I do it like this? Or update field action? Well, if that's allowed, then I will not complain. Don't need the switch. Okay, then what do we do? Components should be the destructuring of, we no longer have a components object. We just say that data.id should equal to new component. And the new component is what in this case, if we're updating the fields? It is state.components at data dot data dot what? Data dot ID. It should be everything there merged with data dot fields. Saying this is supposed to be a colon, but state is all components, which we already have components here. That's state. State is the list of components. At this. And field, well, we actually know fields is not a partial. Fields is always going to include everything. So we can just, no, we can't. Just, we want to destructure state, and then we want to set this, that's where the colon is, equal to that. Great. So we destructure all the components again. Isn't that what we're doing here though? We're saying at this ID, it should equal to just data.fields. Because this is again, just components. In which case data.fields should include the ID. Then we don't need this. Then we don't need this. Don't need any of this. Everything to do with components. We can add components or we can update fields. But the update fields is really referring to something specific. We'll have to play around with this later. And in the meantime, if we go back to purchase, we need to actually pass in ID into fields. Object.assign fields ID. Now you only take fields because ID is incorporated in there. Oh no, we still need ID. Okay, screw it. Yeah, pass in this separately. Reducer. And here, destructure fields and merge it with ID. Destructure data.fields. And merge it with ID is equal to ID. What's the issue? Cannot find ID. That makes sense. It's data.id. All right. Did it run? State, components, 2 components, play. Boop. So here's what we have. Data, ID, fields, share, blah, blah, blah. Nice, nice, nice. And now, in where we're debugging, got state, components, purchase. Purchase shares now has share quantity. Still has the ID and everything else. It's in the store. Under this component, we can see it's in the store. So now, all we really need to do, go back to that purchase component, no longer setting state. We're actually reading this from this dot props dot component. We know that this component is tracking all of these 3 things. Component are defined. Well, components can really have anything for now. Like I did that. Let's not be too restrictive as their type. Yeah. So we're going to be reading these values now from the props. Refresh. Let's just run with it. A few errors, but it's showing. Sweet. Warning, a component is changing an uncontrolled input of type undefined to be controlled. A component is changing an uncontrolled input of type. Okay, why was it undefined? It would be undefined if component didn't exist. Component wouldn't exist if on first mount state didn't exist. Components, purchase shares already exists. It doesn't have the values, and TypeScript would definitely complain that we're not initializing this record correctly, but it's there. We type 1 and we click play, and now it complains. Value, share price. Can we just set them all equal to 0? Technically, we would not want to do this here again. This is everything TypeScript does not want us to do. And plus we're doing it in the render function. Run. Now they're all set to 0. And now we don't have any warnings. Great. The thing is still not working though. The inputs are erasing something somewhere. But in the meantime, we no longer use state. We no longer use this state. We no longer need the constructor. These are now being read not from this state. Oh, and this is probably why it's messing up the update field, because now they're read from this props.component. And everything else should follow. Fields should be initialized again to this props.component. Does this do what I think it does? I think so. So we want to make it a new object because we don't want to actually set it to the original object's value. Otherwise, we actually do use, where do we use it? Oh, we don't use it. I thought we manipulated fields, but instead we actually assign it to something new conditionally. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Received not a number. Why did you receive not a number? Oops, 1. Update field, fields. Share price is undefined, and that makes sense. Because we only initialize them to 0 here, we don't actually initialize them to 0 anywhere else. And the component, let's keep this logic of initialization out of the component. The reducer should technically know what this is, and that should be here. Const new component should equal to an object. Oh, yeah, no, okay, I'm not going to make a record for it just yet. But here we've got share price should be 0, I don't remember what I actually called them. Purchase component. There we go, these three. Okay, we're missing the comma. We're missing something else apparently too. Share quantity. To type component. Oh yes, but you're no longer a type component because I've had enough of typing for now. I wanna get some workout. Okay, that should fix the issue of things being undefined. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Now we actually have the state doing that. The global store keeping track of this. This is still local, however. Oh, what a mission. Wow. Cell calculator. Go to the definition. We got a lot to do here. Yeah. Okay, connect. As any. And then I should really just copy a bunch of stuff over from the purchase calculator. There we go. Copy the left side, paste, and then no longer need the debugger. Map state to props. Map state to props. Are you the store state though? Well, you're not defined. Connect, yeah. Import connect from React Redux. Update field, yes please. Save all that. Now you should not have a local state anymore. What you should, however, oh, no, yeah, that's it, that's correct. Removed, constructor, removed. This is all being read from this.props.component. And then there should be a destructuring of this, oops, this, oh my, this.props.component. Why is this an issue? Does not exist. Right, we haven't even added this yet. It's optional and it's any. This.props.component. And theoretically, now we should have the cell component also connected. 5. No, it's not. Why? Update field. Right, we're not setting the state. This.props.update field. We also renamed this to field. And right, we have to also say that we're getting update field. It's conditional and optional in any type. And let's see if it's connected this time. Well, it's triggering actions, but fields is undefined. Why is that? Let field equal to blah. But it's saying fields is undefined, right? Fields. It's expecting fields, plural. Nope. Whoa, the ID is, oh, the first input is the ID. And the ID is the component ID from the props. We should really just read this in. But I guess this the props.id. Let's go up here. Const component. Oh, it's all different. Yeah, it's relative. Yeah, let's do it. Const ID, update field, and component should equal to this dot props. Now this should just be component. This should also just be the component. Update field is just update field. And now we can call ID. Okay. Finally. Oh my god. 2, 3. Let's do this real quick. Let's whip out the summary component and call it a day. We got this. So purchase, sell, new file, summary, calculator. You shall have, no, don't open on the side. Why can't I, are you a file? Don't be a file. You should be a folder. New folder, summary, underscore calculator. New file, index, and let's copy everything in purchase, except you are now, whoa, summary. And what does the, okay, we're gonna have to do a couple of things to make this work the way we kind of want it to. The summary calculator shouldn't really, at least for now, have inputs. And what it's going to want, what is it going to be summarizing, is, let's first of all import it, and then I'll explain. We need to know which purchase calculator it's referring to, and which sell calculator, like which components data in the store in here does it need. Right now we only have 2, but moving forward, with especially with tabs, you're going to have a lot of them. So whoever is rendering, the parent, whoever is rendering the summary calculator should also pass in the purchase and the sell calculators IDs. So import, we can just do this. Summary calculator. You're rendering it. So let's give it a PID. And that's just this one. And let's give it a cell ID, which is that. It's got a PID and a cell ID. That's really all it needs, I think, to show all the data that we wanted to show. So if we go back here and then go to the top, we've got the purchase ID and the sell ID, which is also a string. And then it's not ever going to be changing, so don't need to handle on change. And as far as rendering, well, before we get to the render, let's actually read stuff for, like, let's get the components based on these IDs. So purchase component should be state.components at the position of props.pid, and then the cell component will just be the same at SID. It does not need a component, it does not need the ID, it does not need to connect to update field. This needs a comma. There we go. The inputs don't need a handle on changes. So what if we just remove this entirely? Go Could just disable the inputs. Maybe that'll hide the errors from throwing. Disabled? Yeah. And we don't want to do too much of the logic in the render functions. So even though we're just reading stuff in from the components, let's do the calculations in a separate method. Get summary. So yeah, let's just define this function, and this will read const quantity should equal to by share quantity, or as by share quantity should equal to this dot props dot purchase component. What's going on? Why is it not auto highlighting? Because this is why. We need to actually tell the component props that it could get a purchase component and the sell component. By share quantity, and then share price as by share price, and then subtotal. Technically, we don't even need these two things. Now that I think about it, we just need the subtotal for now, for a simple, very simple component. So this is the by subtotal. Then we could get the sell subtotal from the sell component. And then, okay, well, since it's this simple, maybe we could have done it in the render function, but sell sub, whoa, typing is hard. Sell subtotal minus by subtotal. Summary has the same styles, but let's say we give it a manual style of width 100% for now. And we remove the other inputs. The name should be the difference, HTML for difference, and yeah, difference for now. It's not the best word, but just gonna power through it. So we're gonna define difference as this dot get summary, and then we're gonna use that difference here. And update field does not need to be imported. The component is now super simple. Here we go. The width maybe should not be 100%. Maybe the width should be whatever these two are. Maybe these two should be actually in a parent container. 416, 416, margins of padding. That's 400 something times 2, 416, 832 plus 16 times 4, 64, 864 pixels. Ballpark. Cool. 44, 34. Great. There's the summary. 834 pixels. Difference is not a number. Why is the difference not a number? Why is the difference not a number? Okay. Oh, this doesn't exist. Of course, subtotal should be this. And the subtotal from here should be named as that. Yeah, my bad. Let's not break for breakpoints anymore. So share quantity, 100 shares at $100. We sold them for $0, so our summary is horrible. Share quantity what if we sold half of them and the share price was double? We break even. If the share price was the same, we lose half the money because we're only selling half. 100 shares, selling them at the same price, 250. There you go. We have the difference component. Wow, that was a mission. That was more typing than I expected. A lot of bugs appeared there. Some of them were the repo I'm working with. I think this is definitely a good place to stop. Next episode, gonna have tabs, gonna have a lot more of these purchase sell components, and gonna have a lot more detail in the summary row as well as to the different discrepancies between the purchase and the sell. See ya.